In this video I will show you how I used only one sample to create this techno track. I'm going to be using this sample to create the kick, the bass, the mids, the hats, basically everything. And no, this time I'm not going to use a literal fart as my source sound, because today I'm using whatever this is. And if you're asking where I got this sample from, I got it from the depths of hell. I got it from using a certain interesting technique that not many people know about, but I'll talk about that at the end of the video. For now, let's get to making the track. So I want to show you that you really don't need any fancy plugins or anything like that. So today I'm using just this one sample and Ableton stock plugins. Alright, so we have the sample right here. Put it into a MIDI track, let's say. And I think I want to start by creating the kick and the bass. There's quite a bit of low end in here, so I think we could manage to do it. Right now I'm trying to create a kick, and the characteristic thing about a kick is that its pitch usually goes down at the start very rapidly, so let me simulate that in here somehow. So in the controls of my sampler I have this pitch envelope, so let's turn it up. Turn down the decay. Maybe I could just try and pitch this whole thing down. Let's accentuate it with a drum bus. Give it some crunch, some boom as well. Oh, I like that. Let's try some different start points. This is getting a bit wild in the stereo, so I'm gonna turn it to mono. I don't want my bass to be too all over the place, so that's why I'm doing that. Alright, fuck it. It's time to add an OTT in here. Ooh, that's a bit too intense. Alright, maybe let's try a different type of distortion. A pedal might work. Yeah, by the way, I'm going to increase the tempo a little bit more. Okay, I played around a bit with the pedal distortion, and I think that's a pretty interesting result. I'm thinking this could be actually not the kick, but our bass. So I'm just gonna duplicate it and call it the bass. And out of this first thing, I'm going to try make something that sounds a little bit more like a kick. I'm gonna send it to my return track, which I have an amp on there. So I'm actually going to group the kick and add a layer beneath it. So that we have a very like clicky kick and the very subby kick. Okay, we might want to EQ this clicky one a bit, so that it's actually clicky. Yeah, I just increased the pitch envelope even more. Right now the subby kick is, I think, a little too long on the tail, because it's gonna clash with our bass thing that we duplicated earlier. So let me just turn it down a little bit. Yeah, I think that works more or less. So onto our bass. It's a bit intense, so let's start off by applying a sidechain compression to it. Okay, that's cool. Let me just turn up the frequency parameter on the EQ here, so that the audio that we get from the kick is only the higher frequencies, so that it's more snappy, like so. So just turn the bass down. Actually, I kind of like the stereo on the bass, so I'm just going to make the very low frequencies of it mono with the utility bass mono setting right here. The higher ones can stay stereo. Alright, so I'm gonna group this together, color it nicely, call it the lows. Let's try some additional group processing on there. Maybe an amp. Maybe an amp in parallel processing. So I'm just going to group this amp and add a dry chain so that this amp is just a cherry on top. Okay, how about we switch up the rhythm of the bass a little bit, make it bounce more. Hey, that's cool! Wow, I didn't expect that. This is a very interesting bass that we have going on right now. By the way, if you like my way of doing things and you're finding this track from scratch format valuable, I'm hosting more of this type of content in the form of masterclasses on my Patreon page. So I'll leave that in the video description. Alright, so let's get back to it. You know, I wanted to do the mids, but the bass is taking up a lot of the mids right now, so we might need to go a little bit easier on the mids. That's really cool though. Alright, so let's add another MIDI track with the sample and try to build something on top of this bass thing that we've created. I'm trying to think of what we could do here. First off, let me EQ out the lows because we want this to be some sort of synth and we don't want it to clash with the bass. Okay, this could work as a polymeter, I feel like. I made this into a polymeter by setting the length of the pattern to a non-standard length. Like usually you would have something like 1 bar, for example, but I had just had 1.5 beats. So that way it interacts with the kick in some more interesting ways. And you know what? We could maybe add a chord device in here. I think we're going to have to switch to the classic mode, not the one shot. So I'm just gonna play around with adding different intervals right now. I don't know what key I'm in, by the way. Alright, an octave down and 7 semitones up works. I like how that sounds. It adds some character to it. I think that's an improvement. Let's make it more intricate by adding some echo to it, why not? I quite like what we've got going on here. Let's keep doing some more crazy stuff. I really like experimenting with the Granulator, so I'm going to use it right now. Just gonna drag this sample that we have here to it, and now I can play it as an instrument. And you know, I'm not sure what I really want to go for right now with this Granulator MIDI track. So to find some inspiration, I'm just going to use a sequencer, and I don't know, we'll see. It's kind of interesting. You know, I really like that sequence. This could be like our kind of hook. I'm just gonna add a new MIDI track and set it to get MIDI from the Granulator, arm the track, and record the MIDI into it, so that our sequence doesn't get lost. Right, so I'm just gonna drag it here. Now I can turn off the sequencer. So I have this repeating pattern, so I'm just gonna loop it. I think it's 8 steps long. That's where it loops. I'm just gonna clip. Fucking helicopters. Crazy stuff. So I'm just gonna cripple? Fuck, I'm just gonna crop this clip, and now I have these 8 steps. And right now what I basically want to do is identify which steps in this sequence are the ones that are the most pronounced, so that I can determine which ones I can delete. So yeah, so it looks like these 3 notes are the main bulk of the sequence. They're the most important ones in here. I do kind of like these additional ones, though I'm gonna just add some swing to the sequence, just to spice things up a bit. Cool. Yeah, we don't really need to overcomplicate the mids because we already have a lot of information in the mid-range coming from the bass already because of how distorted it is. But yeah, we still need to do something with the hats because we don't have them yet. So just like before, I'm just going to create a new MIDI track, drag our sample in. Remember, this sample is what we're making everything out of. I'm just going to start with putting down a simple upbeat rhythm. I'm gonna put it to one-shot mode. So yeah, basically we should just transpose the sample up, or maybe if that doesn't really sound like we want it to, which it doesn't right now, I don't like it, we could make it more noisy by adding a vocoder. It adds a lot of noise, and we can change the amount of bands here to change how it's affecting the sound. I'm just gonna remove these lower ones. And with the release and attack settings, you can really adjust the way that this vocoder thing sounds. So I'm thinking we could just stick to a simple closed hat like this. And I always like to add some echo to my hats to make them more interesting. Just a really subtle one though. I'm going to delay the right channel from the left channel just a tiny little bit to get the extra stereo information going on to make it more interesting. I'm setting it to a drum reverb as well. Yeah, but basically now that we have the basics of the hi-hat down, we can just start duplicating it and adjusting it to make the layers that we want. So this time I'm trying to go for more of a shaker. And shakers usually have a bit of a longer attack. They're more soft, you could say. So I'm just going to increase the attack on the vocoder right here to achieve that. Yeah, the release is also short. Yeah, I hope you can hear how that sounds a bit more like a shaker now. I think I'm just going to go for a bit of a different technique. Put down a note every 16th note, every step. Add a groove from the groove pool as well. Why not? Yeah, you can also change the format in the vocoder to differentiate it from the original sound a little bit. Alright, that works. Let's duplicate it once again and add some sort of ride. Rides are really useful when you want to create a very climactic part of the track. So in the final drops is usually where you use them most often. With the ride, what I'm trying to do is adjust the release time. So that it's very long. It's like rides are usually pretty much a wave of noise, basically. But yeah, the attack is usually not that high on the rides. So as you can see, you really don't need anything fancy. No expensive plugins or anything like that. All you do need is a knowledge of what to use, when to use it, and how to use it. And you know, if this has been inspiring for you so far, I want to remind you that I'm hosting more of this type of track from scratch content on my Patreon page. I go much more in depth there and it's more unfiltered. So again, it's gonna be in the video description. So we went from nothing but a small sample to a full-on techno track. We did that just by being smart with how we used the effects. And the beautiful thing is that now we can export each of these new sounds that we've created and add them to our sample library so that we have more possibilities in the future. But now, you might be asking how I actually made the sample that we started with. And well, it involved using Ableton's return tracks in a pretty unusual way. And if you want to learn more about that, I talk about it in this video. So click right here to watch it, and I'll see you there.